Okay, so believe it or not, there are some situations where you might come across a wireless network that's just not encrypted. Maybe they've just gone through and hid the SSID and thought that that's a great plan. So you as a security expert needs to go through certain steps. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go through and actually check to see if the SSID for the wireless network or the access points is visible or hidden. Now, depending on whether it is hidden or visible will determine the steps that you take. And you're going to see some of these steps are very similar to what we saw with cracking or the pen testing steps for WPA, WPA2, and WEP. So first let's talk about if by chance the SSID is visible. So let's start with talking about what would happen if it was a visible SSID. We would just simply sniff for an IP address range and then check the status of MAC filtering. And if MAC filtering was enabled, we would just simply spoof the MAC address using a tool like SMAC, or just connect to the access point using an IP address that's in that discovered range that you've found. If by chance the SSID is hidden, however, we'll do the same thing that we saw in the WPA and WPA2, and as well as the WEP pen testing steps, and that is we would do a deauthentication against the client. We would then just simply wait for it to reauthenticate again by sniffing, and then we'd go through those same steps that we just talked about for a SSID that was visible. Again, we would sniff for an IP address range, see if MAC filtering is enabled. So you can see that obviously in a open or an unencrypted Wi-Fi environment, even if you're hiding the SSID, it's not going to be very beneficial to you. Now, once you've done those steps, your next step is, yes, documentation. Yeah, you knew it was coming, and you'll see why a little bit later on when we get to the final module, why documentation is so important. At this stage, we should be pretty thorough in our documentation, but when we get to the presentation side of the documentation, we're going to strip out the stuff that's really relevant to present to the client. But we'll talk about that in a later module.